What's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of the Powerhouse Mentality Podcast. I'm your host. I am Caitlin Kenna Smith, and today I have one of my best friends and Hidden Summit colleagues, Sam Norman, back on the podcast for round 2. And this time she gets into how, over the last year, she's been able to unlock a new perspective towards her abilities in life simply by changing the narrative that she tells herself. We go way back to where it all started with building limiting beliefs during her childhood and how you can also learn how to break those limiting false beliefs that are holding you back from building the life and earning the results that you want. As always, guys, if you found value from this episode, please share it on your social medias, share it with a friend who needs to hear it, and enjoy it. All right, guys. So today we are here again with Sam Norman, one of my favorite podcast guests that I've ever had on. She actually reached out to me this time, was like, yo, Caitlin, I'm going to be on your podcast again. We're going to talk about this. And we planned this probably like a little over a month ago before the holidays, but it kind of worked out that this is the perfect time. We're recording this on January 2nd. And what we're going to talk about today, I really think is going to help you with a New Year's resolution, or I like to just say New Year's goals, because resolutions I feel like equate to failure more often than just like, hey, I'm setting a new goal for a new period of time. But Sam, what did you reach out to me initially to talk about?
The original thought was changing the way that you speak to yourself
Mm-hmm.
and kind of how to move yourself forward. I think originally it was like how to get yourself out of challenging or like difficult situations, but like you said, like thinking of it in that new year goal kind of way, it's I think probably the best way to put yourself in a better position to hit your goals or to reach those milestones that you want um, faster and actually be able to stick to your plan this time.
Yeah. And this kind of all came about because, like you were talking about with me earlier, and like you've shared on the podcast before, this has been one of the most challenging years of your life, 2023. And now we're in
Yeah.
2024. But throughout the challenge, like I always say, like through challenge comes triumph if you use it the right way, because nothing happens to you, it all happens for you, but you have to determine what that actually means. It seems like through that challenge, you've learned, okay, I used to talk to myself so terribly, and that's why I could never accomplish the things that I wanted, or always kind of hit a wall. And now this year you've kind of broken through that wall. Is that kind of where you're going?
Yeah, that was really, I think, the biggest thing for me. So to take it like all the way back,
Yeah, let's go.
right? The most stable thing when I was growing up, kind of the most consistent, I should say, was my grandparents, my paternal grandparents. They were always kind of close by whenever we moved. It was typically to be closer to wherever they were, right? And they took a lot of time to raise all 6 of us in different period points, right? Like, to put it lightly, like my parents were not stable
Yeah.
most of the time. So my grandparents took a lot of action as far as raising us. Granny specifically did a lot of that because she was, she stayed at home, and she was straight off a res in Oklahoma, and my grandpa was from Springfield, Missouri. So like that redneck runs real deep.
Runs deep in the veins over there.
It does. And very traditional, very old school Southern Baptist, right?
Yeah.
And if you know anything about like traditional Southern Baptist, it's like if you do anything wrong, you're gonna burn in hell. Like
Yeah.
you can't like one toe out of line, and it was like, no, so that really bled into like the way that I spoke to myself. It's like everything I'm doing is wrong,
Mm-hmm.
and I am just not good enough to meet these standards, right? So that like whether you realize that or not, like obviously when you're growing up, you don't see it as that way, but like when you look back at it, it's like that's kind of where that started. It was like we were like hokey pokey, old school redneck, like, and it's just like, we were just not good enough growing up, and couple that with like an unstable childhood and having to move all the time and doing all of these things. Um, Obviously that's not the situation for everybody,
Right.
but when you look at it, like that's where that internal dialogue comes from. And this year, or I guess last year, as challenging as it was, brought that clarity for me as far as like, no, I don't have to see things like these things are not happening because I'm a terrible person or
Mm-hmm.
because I'm bad or anything. It's like I am learning how to say like I'm not forgettable. I am worthy of love. Like these things are happening because they had to happen so that I could be better. So how do I get better?
Right. Yeah. And that kind of goes back to like, there's a lesson to learn from every situation. And I think it's really important to have the awareness to look back and be like, okay, where did these feelings come from? Because generally, most of us have something that we think of ourselves that's like a false or a limiting belief. And for a lot of people, it's similar to that, where it's like, I'm never doing enough, or I'm not good enough, or I'm never going to be enough. I'm never going to uphold to these standards. And that doesn't just come out of thin air. It comes from something usually that's happened to you that you've constantly been taught throughout your life that's not true, but you have been taught to believe it, such as like when you were with your grandparents, and if you did one little thing wrong, they would jump at you and say that, like, not say that you're a terrible person, but just like make you
That
feel
reaction,
that
yeah.
way. Yeah. So
Yeah.
can you remember like a specific example of like the discipline that you had when you were a kid, from your grandparents that like led to that belief?
Yeah. Specifically one time, and I can't even tell you like why it stands out so much, but like, and this is not to say that like my grandparents did not love me
Oh
or
yeah.
love all of us, right? Like they were very loving, but it was definitely one of those things that if you did something wrong, you knew something was coming.
Oh yeah.
And it was very much like children should be seen and not heard. So one time I remember very specifically, they had just got new carpet, and it was really light colored carpet.
Mm.
Um, and I had had a pop, and it was not like a in a can. I had had it in glass.
Time out for those of us who don't understand lingo. That is a soda. New York.
I had a soda pop. I had a pop, and it was in a cup. Um, and my grandpa, who was very much the softer one, um, gently reminded me. He's like, "Hey, if you're gonna bring that into the living room, you cannot spill." I was like, "Yes, sir. You got it. I'm good." And like 30 seconds later,
Yep.
I dropped it on the ground, and my granny screamed at me. And I couldn't tell you what she said
Yeah.
or what happened after that, but I remember the reaction. And it was, I think that's what stood out most because my grandpa again, very softly was like, "Hey, you can't drop that in here." I'm like, "Got it." And then I dropped it.
Yeah.
And I think that reaction was even worse so because he knew or she knew that he had just told me not to drop it. And
Hmm.
I was like maybe 10
Yeah.
at that point, you know? So it was that kind of narrative pretty often that was just like, you know better. Even if I wasn't reminded beforehand, it was like, you know better, you shouldn't do that.
Hmm.
And now you've done it. And then we're gonna scream.
Yeah. And if you constantly get that feedback, it starts to allow you to believe that, oh, everything that I do, it's not enough. It's kind of like when you're trying to impress somebody else, but for some reason they're never impressed by the things that you do, and you're almost
Yeah.
living your life to make them happy. When in all reality, it's like, who gives a shit what anybody else thinks? It matters if you're living a life that you can be proud of.
Yeah, for sure. And I think too, what I've noticed, at least with the people that I've spoken to about it with, is like there's this like youngest child syndrome, or it's
Yes.
like so I am the youngest of six, right? Um, I have four older brothers and one older sister. The boys were all very much like rambunctious, nothing ever serious except minus one, but like picking them up in the middle of the night from jail, and it's like, getting into trouble at school, or like getting caught with cigarettes, stuff like that. And then there's my sister, who's like the track star and was my mom for a very long time. She's very strict, and like she's only 3 years older than me, but she's got that like mom energy.
Yeah.
Um, and then there was me. And it was like nobody's really paying attention because there's all of this other stuff happening. So if I did something wrong, it was like blaringly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that plays into it too, that like when you grow up, you still have that mentality of like, if I do something wrong, everybody notices
Yeah. So
and
then you're less
nobody gives a
willing.
shit.
Yeah. Then you're less willing to take risks or do things because you're afraid, even more so than a lot of people, of
Yeah.
just the pushback that you could potentially get, even though, like we've said many, many times, those are all false beliefs that you've created in your own head through this narrative.
Yeah. So then you continue that, like you said, throughout your life, like not putting yourself out there. When you do put yourself out there, you have that inner dialogue. Like you can have the best plan and like this big goal, and you've written down the steps and you know how to get there. And if your mind keeps telling you like you're not going to do it, you're just not good enough for that, or like you're never going to make it, no matter how detailed that plan is, you're not going to make it
Mm-hmm.
because your mind will stop you before you get to take those steps because you're afraid. And it's a subconscious thing that not many people realize when they continue to fail, so to say. Um, it's not so much because they can't stick to this or they can't do that. It's because that inner dialogue of them saying, like, you're never going to make it. You're not worthy of this. You don't get to feel this way. That's what stops them. It's not like lack of discipline or lack of willpower. It's that lack of belief in themselves to do the things that they know that they can.
Yeah, belief is a really big part of the equation that not a lot of people put thought into. They think like, oh, if I have the discipline, if I have the perfect plan, then I'll be okay. But if you have the perfect plan, which doesn't actually exist, but say that it did, right? Say that there was a perfect plan, you have it. If you don't have belief that you can actually accomplish the goal, then you're never actually going to accomplish the goal, because I don't care if thousands of people don't believe in you, so long as you believe in yourself, you're going to be okay. But the second that you doubt yourself, that's when you lose everything.
Yeah.
So
And I
then
think,
go ahead.
oh no, that's just, I think that's like the missing piece that, like, you hear all of the extremely successful people, when they talk about these things, they talk about mindset.
Yeah.
They talk about believing in yourself and the way that you talk to yourself. And it's so largely like not paid attention to because it sounds like woohoo,
Yep.
so that nobody listens to it. But when you start to do it, you're like, oh, holy shit, this is the piece that I've been missing.
Yeah. And that's why visualization is such an important aspect to accomplishing a big goal. Like, so many people think like visualization and creating vision boards are like that woo woo shit, because like I can imagine myself in this dream home, in my dream car, like feeling the emotions behind it, feeling the emotions behind running a business or doing all of these different things in CrossFit. But the second that you tell people that, they're like, wait, what do you mean you can't just visualize it? No, you can't just visualize it. You have to fucking do the work that goes along with it. But if you're doing the work and you don't believe, then eventually one little bump in the road is going to cause you to say, well, it's happening again, I'm failing again, okay, we're just going to
Yeah.
go with it, and we're just going to go back to my old habits and start from day one again. But what kind of brought you to this point where you're like, hey, I have the awareness of what happened and I want to start to talk about it with other people so I can help other people who were in that same scenario?
Um, I don't know. I think it was just a series of like little small moments. They talk about like glimmers where you can see things that will
Yeah.
be better, right? The opposite of trigger, whatever it was. And I think it was just like a series of those moments where it was like, wow, I would not have made that decision a year ago.
Yeah.
Um, And that was, again, it was a difficult year.
Yeah.
And it's been building for sure, just as far as like, again, I am very into like the woohoo, like not just vision boards and, and things like that. Like I'm very into the woohoo, largely because of the way that I was brought up. Like it feels very weird to be religious to me.
Mhm.
um and I very much respect people that can do that, but to me, like I feel safe in the woohoo.
Yeah.
So learning to like lean into that and to not be afraid of it anymore, that was like my biggest shift in the beginning of last year, was like not pushing that down anymore because it was weird, but really leaning into that, was like leaning into that space and being more confident in that, and realizing like I can reprogram myself in the way that I speak to myself. It's like if more people understood this, then they could be the person that they wanted to be.
Yeah, that's kind of like when if you're constantly telling yourself like, "Oh, I suck," or "Oh, I'm so broke," or "Oh, this sucks. I'm just a terrible person." Then subconsciously you start to believe it and your actions are going to follow suit with that. Right?
Yeah.
Because if you continue to tell yourself the opposite where you're like, "I am enough. I am a badass," then
Yeah.
you're more likely to do and take action on the things that are actually going to prove that point to yourself.
Right. Or must be nice. I can't tell you how much I
Oh my
hate
God. Every
that
time
phrase.
somebody says must
Must be
be nice,
nice. Like, yes. And you're telling yourself that you're not going to have that.
yeah, must be nice. Okay, I'm gonna kick you in the mouth first.
Yep.
But that's like when somebody says like, oh, dang, like I wish I had that. I wish I had this. Well, it's like if you're hating on somebody who has something that you want, then the universe puts out that energy. Like it's like the law of attraction, right? I truly believe in the law of attraction. Like if you put out positive energy, more positive shit's gonna happen to you. If you put out negative
Absolutely.
energy, negative shit's gonna happen to you. I've seen it so many times play out. Like I'll use an example. My mom, every time she flies, her planes get delayed, but she fucking puts that shit into the universe because every time she's like, oh, I hope my plane doesn't get delayed. I probably should get there early so that my plane doesn't get delayed. I should probably, which doesn't make sense. And then she's like, I should probably have my connecting flight like hours and hours apart just in case. And almost every time her plane gets delayed.
You
However,
know what's
I'll walk in
wild?
there and I'm just like, yep, we're flying the same fucking airline, but I'm going to be okay because I have a positive outlook because no problems, only solutions. Even if there is something that comes up, you can stop in that moment and ask yourself, okay, well, what can I do? Not,
Right.
oh, this sucks. Because living a life where you keep saying, oh, this sucks, that just sounds like a terrible life to live.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's crazy. The last time I flew, I had this thought like an hour before I left for the airport. It's like, I wonder what it's like to have your flight delayed. Just as a thought. Not like, oh, my flight's going to be delayed. I had a thought like, I wonder what that's like. And it wasn't delayed that time. A separate time it was. But what happened was, my plane sat on the runway for a good 30 minutes, so that my connecting flight, I had like 10 minutes in the Denver airport to get from
Oh
B
no.
all the way to A. Like I had to get on the train to get to the different, and I ran, and thank God I was doing enough conditioning that I could run from one place to the other, or I would not have made it. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to have that thought ever again.
Yeah, more perks of being a fitness person. You know, if you're doing your workouts, then you're going to be able to
Yeah.
run through the Denver airport to make your flight. Which, by the way, the Denver airport may be the most hectic and stupid laid out airport of all time. That in Arizona, I don't know about you, but when I got in for Coaching Con, I was so fucking confused by the Arizona airport.
You know what? I actually went because I got in at like 11:30 at night.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it was because it was like north side and then south side, and it was like, well, your Uber's on the north side. I'm like, I don't know where I am.
Yeah. My
Like,
Uber
don't
driver
give me
couldn't
north
find me.
and south. I don't know what that means. And I went to ask one of the like people that was working not so much at the airport, but like at one of the food spots,
Yeah.
like a mini convenience store. And she's like, it's on the other side. I'm like, that's so fucking helpful.
Thank you. Thank
Thank you. So yeah, I was lost there, but Denver is, I don't know what it is about Denver. Every time I get there, I forget about like the train to go to the
you. Yeah.
different concourses. So, um I get lost almost every time. But fortunately, because I live in the middle of nowhere, I usually have like a 3 hour layover.
Yeah, yeah, you do live in the
Not the
middle.
time that I had to run, but
Yeah.
obviously,
I feel like living in the middle of
why would
nowhere
I?
is a nice thing, though. That's kind of, Stone and I are like thinking about where we want to go after Florida, and it's like the middle of nowhere in Montana sounds really fucking nice.
Until you need something or like you're
Yeah.
sick and you have to go to the doctor, like we have doctors in town. They're garbage, but we have doctors.
There's a lot of garbage doctors though, but that's another conversation.
That's a whole other podcast.
Yeah, like it will be a podcast. I've mentioned it so many times, but I feel like the biggest thing here that we're talking about comes all the way back to identity, and
Yeah.
who you believe you are is who you are, not who you want to become. Like if you continue to tell yourself like I'm just always the dieter, I'm always the fat friend, then you're always going to be that person until you start changing the narrative that you tell yourself.
Right. Right. And that's one of my one thing that I posted today actually about my intentions for the new year.
Mhm.
Sorry. Um I've never been a runner. Like I was not like that's not I was that kid. Like I played sports but only because I was tall. So um now that I've had the last 8 months or so to really work on my conditioning and really work on my fitness and become more of an athlete,
Yeah.
um one of my intentions for this year is to run a mile or two a few times a week for no reason other than I am capable.
I love that goal. I love running. And I wasn't always a runner. Actually, I got into running because when my dad was like on drugs and our family was like falling apart, I was like, I just need to go outside. I'm gonna run. I like ran the problem
Yep.
solving. But then it allowed me to like have that space where I learned to fall in love with running because it's literally just you and your
Hmm.
thoughts. And like now I utilize it to like listen to a podcast. So I'm like taking time for myself and getting away from the noise. And I think that's the best part about running is because yes, it helps with you getting in shape, but also it helps with mental toughness because
Hmm.
there's nothing to distract you, even if you're listening to music or a podcast, from like the fact that you're running and getting uncomfortable. That's really it.
Right, yeah. But the big thing for me was the way that it's phrased because that makes such a huge difference. I was not a runner. I have never been a runner. However, I am capable
Yes, you
and
are.
I can do this.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm choosing to run because I can do this.
Yeah.
And that's that tweak. And I think we've talked about this on a level 2 call too. Um, Phrasing it not as I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I'm so excited to see how I figure this out.
Yep. Yep. I
Because
like
that
to
puts you
say,
in
like,
that.
don't focus on like what you can't do, but focus on what you can
Mhm.
do. And if you can't do it yet, then that's it. You can't do it yet, but I'm gonna do everything in my power to make it happen.
Right. It puts you in that solutions mindset. Like, this is a problem. Like, and a lot of times, I don't know how many times I've said that to you or to Liz this year. It's like, this is a problem that I can't fix now,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm going to figure it out and it will be fixed and it will be better because I'm going to do what I can to get there. And in the meantime, I'm going to focus on the good and
Yeah.
telling myself these things.
Yeah. I
And
mean, I
that's
think
where I
that
think,
go for it.
no, that's, I think a lot of people get bogged down in that space where it's like, this is a problem and I'm not good enough and this isn't working. And they just stop.
Yeah. And I think you can kind of test this as well as like when you have those moments where you tell yourself like I can't, then you're never going to. Like
Yeah.
if that's like walking up to a barbell and you're going into a back squat PR and in your head you're already telling yourself you can't hit it, you're not going to even have a chance. But if you go into that squat with belief that you're going to hit it, you're more likely to hit it.
Yeah. What's something that I do that I've noticed and I laugh at myself about it because it sounds so stupid, but it makes such a difference whenever I'm going into any lift that I'm like just hesitant about the weight. Like I'm not really sure if I can
Yeah.
do this or like I'm not really sure how good this is going to be. I go into it like I will stand in front of the bar and like it's 65 pounds. That is all the weight that is on this bar right now because I can do anything with 65 pounds, anything. And then when you tell yourself that and you get it in your mind like this is only 65 pounds, the lifts are so much better than when I
Yeah.
go up to it and I'm like, oh shit, I don't.
Yeah, like
And
there's so
it's
many
that like
times where
internal.
I'll hit like a PR because I just like Eric will be like, okay, maxing out today. He doesn't do that often, but when he does, then I don't even pay attention to the weight I'm loading. I just load it up and I'm like, okay, that's heavier squat. Okay, that felt good. Add more weight. And I'm not counting in my head what it is until like the very end where I'm like, okay, I can't do anymore. Oh, I failed a rep. So where are we at?
Yeah. Yeah. Not going into it knowing what the weights are, but like I did that yesterday. Like I don't know what's on here, but I'm gonna go until I can't lift it and then I'm gonna figure it out. And it's crazy what that does to your brain.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's like the story you tell yourself, right?
Yeah.
Because we literally are writing a story for ourselves, right? There's a path that's written out for us, but we have to be an author in that path. Like we can't just
Mhm.
let things happen to us and allow our mind can be our greatest enemy or could be our greatest tool. But we have the power to use it. Nobody
Yeah.
else does. We're in control. And I think a lot of people that's where they fail, is that they don't think that they're in control of their thoughts and they allow these thoughts to take over. And what they tell themselves in their head isn't actually true. And it's not until you have the awareness that you've gained over the last year to be like, oh, okay, I can change the narrative. And when I change the narrative, I'm more successful and I grow much more quickly.
Right. And I think like so two parts to that. My favorite practice, I guess so to say, when you're trying to change those thoughts. Um when you recognize yourself saying those things, like say like you do something wrong or you're just having a bad day or like things are off, whatever it is, and you're like, man, I'm a piece of shit. Like, man, I'm never gonna get this.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as you feel that or like tell yourself those things, immediately switch it. Like complete opposites. Like I am so good at doing this. Like, you know what? I'm gonna do this and it's gonna be amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as you do that, even like as terrible as it feels, because it's gonna feel awful, like to tell yourself those things. Not so much because like they're bad things to hear, but because you so much don't believe them.
Mm.
And that's another piece. It's like you're not gonna believe it
Yep.
as like when you're starting. You're just not. But
Mm-hmm.
you can continue to say like, I'm gonna figure it out. Or like I am so good at doing this. And when you can catch yourself and switch it immediately, you start to do that more and more often. And like you said, what you don't realize is that while you continue to move forward and continue to follow that plan, while you're changing those thoughts, you're going to look back in 6 months or a year and you can be like, holy shit,
Yeah. The more you tell yourself,
look
the
at the
more you believe
difference.
it, and the more you take action on it.
Yeah. And it's again, it's that law of attraction that you're telling yourself these good things. And it's never just saying the good things. Like you have to continue to put in the work, tell yourself these good things. And what you don't realize is happening between the two is all those glimmers that continue to push you forward that you can look back on in 6 months and like, there is no way that these things would have happened if I would have stayed in that mentality of like, I'm just not good. This is just not for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's the combination of the two that makes the difference.
Yeah. And I want to go back to the part where you were saying, at first it's going to feel really shitty when you're telling yourselves these things because you don't believe in them. And,
Yeah.
For me, there was a point in time, I think it was probably almost a year ago at this point, where I was on a level 2 call and we were doing a wants and a don't wants list, where we'd list out the things that we want out of our life and the things that we don't want. And I know that that fucked a lot of
Yeah.
people up. But
Yes,
it
it
helped
did.
gain a little bit of clarity on like, okay, what do I actually want out of life? Like mind, body, soul, like fear and doubt taken off the table. What do I want? And one of the biggest things that kept coming up in my head was peace. And I was like, well, peace from what? And one of the things was just like peace from my eating disorder. And the action that I took on that was, okay, I'm gonna do these mirror statements that people are all talking about, where I'm gonna say it to myself in the mirror, like, you are recovered from your eating disorder. And I couldn't even do it by looking at myself in the mirror, because every time I would look at myself in the mirror, I would either cry or laugh. Cry because like, fuck, I'm not there yet. I can't do this. Or laugh because it's like, that's so comical. It's not true. Because like, yes, maybe I am recovered in the sense where like, I'm not extremely underweight. I'm eating a lot of food, but mentally I struggle a lot. And I feel like when you do have those disordered eating patterns, and I know that you've had it in the past as well, you don't 100% recover. You just get really fucking good at ignoring those voices.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that changed the perspective for a lot of people that want and don't want list. Um, and it's so funny that you bring up the peace, because that was in my top 5.
Yeah.
Was peace. Like I just want to feel peace.
Yeah.
Because again, like I spent a lot of years just running from one thing to another because I was scared. And one of my mirror statements to this day that stemmed from that was I am surrounded by people who love me. I'm not gonna get emotional on this one.
Yeah, you are.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
That's required. You have to cry on the podcast at least once to be a guest.
That was, and I know that I talked about this the last time I was on the podcast. That's really what Hidden Summit did for me, was leaning into you guys and realizing that I'm not just here because for whatever reason. And I think again, like, pause for a second. That was a huge realization for me. It's like, people don't keep me around for no reason.
Yeah. I
But
don't
that's
send
always how it felt.
For no reason. I send you reels because I want you to stick around, you know?
Yeah. See, and that was one of those internal monologues. It's like, you're only here because there's nowhere else for you to go. And we have to do it. Right? That was, I think, the first thing that I realized when I continued to say that to myself. When I continued to say, I am surrounded by people who love me. That was the realization, like, I am still here at Hidden Summit because the people here really give a shit about me. And you were definitely like that first person. And I'm sure that I said that on the last podcast. Like, I was so scared. I was like, what do you want from me?
Yeah.
Why are you being nice?
Why are you being nice? Oh, I'm sorry.
Why are you nice?
Nice person. I know it's very rare, but people either think when they first meet me, they think I'm a raging bitch because I have the worst resting bitch face, or they think I'm a bitch because I'm being overly nice to the part where they think I'm being sarcastic, or they think that I must want something from them.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that a lot. It's like, you're so quiet, and like coupled with a resting bitch face. And it's like, no, I'm just honestly scared to talk to you.
Yeah.
Like, I don't.
You haven't earned my trust yet, is kind of what it is.
Right. Yeah, it's like, I don't know just how weird I can be yet, so I'm not gonna say anything. Unfortunately, my face says fuck you all of the time.
So does mine. I think all my neighbors think I'm a fucking psychopath because every single time they walk by the garage, I have this face, and they're like, "Oh, well, the crazy lady's out again."
Yep. Yeah. So, but that's, again, like, it's not gonna feel good to say that, because it did not feel good to say, like, I am surrounded by people who love me, when my brain is like, the fuck you are.
Yep.
Like, nobody wants you. Like, nobody wants you around. But it took saying that to myself over and over and over again, that things don't just start to change, but you start to realize the good. Like, I do have people that care about me. These people do love me, and I am here for a reason. It's not just like, because I could go anywhere, and I knew that. Like, I could go anywhere. I have a lot of good skills. I can make money anywhere. I want to be here, and I am valued here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was. I still, and that's still something that I have to say to myself, because I have those moments again. Like, it's not magic. Like, you can say these things, and there are a lot of things that get better. But for me personally, I know that it was so deep rooted that I still have those moments where
Yeah.
those things will continue to pop up, where it's like I don't feel worthy, or I don't feel like I'm loved. And again, it's just reframing that, like, I'm worthy of being loved. Like, I am not forgettable. I have people that care about me. And it's continuing to tell yourself those things on your worst days, which again, like it's something that we say all the time, like how you respond on your worst days determines how good your best days are.
That's a fact. It kind of goes into the New Year's thing right now. Like,
Yeah.
hey, right now, y'all have all this day one, week one energy. You have a lot of inspiration and motivation because it's a new year. But, like, what the fuck happens next week when you wake up and you're tired and you're sore and you're not having a great day? Everything goes to shit. Are you still going to show up and keep those commitments you make to yourself? And it goes the
Yeah.
same way with telling yourself, like, on the days where you don't feel worthy, and telling yourself that you are, like doing the complete opposite of what you normally would and breaking the habit of being yourself in order to become the person that you want to become.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a huge part too. That could be a whole other podcast of just imagining like your best self and what that person would do
Mm-hmm.
in that moment. The
Yeah.
moment that you're questioning, like, who is the person that you would want to be and what would they do in that situation?
Yeah. It's like reverse planning in a sense. Like, if you
Yeah.
want to be this, then you have to determine, okay, what does this person do? And then replicate those things, act as if, because if you start acting as if over time, you develop the habits and behaviors that are what that person has, and then you become that person. Like, we're changing
Right.
every single day. Our present self is as fleeting as the present moment, and you
Yeah.
control that.
Yeah. And that's, I think, another way to kind of reframe those thoughts. And I know that Stacy does this, and she talks about it on a level 2 call, as far as like stating that out loud or writing it down somewhere. I am the person that does X, Y, and Z. Like, I am the person that continues to do things when they're hard, or I am the person that does whatever the hell you want to do and aren't doing yet,
Mm-hmm.
to become that person.
Yeah, because it's the more you tell yourself that, the more your mind is going to look for ways to create that. It's kind of like I give a lot of my clients an exercise where I say, hey, after every single day when you're laying in bed, I want you to ask yourself, like, what was the best part of my day? Because that way you have something that you have to remember that was a great part of your day. So even on the days that are more challenging, you have that good moment. And then throughout your day, as you do this more consistently, you start to actually look for those more positive things in your day. So you have a more positive attitude throughout your entire life, just because of this one simple question that you ask yourself at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a huge one too, actually, like psychologically, like in courses, you can retrain your brain that way. That's why when I pick Abel up from school, like, what was the best part of your day, so that he remembers, like, school is a good place to be.
Yep.
It was
Exactly.
a good day for this reason, and I want to go back and do that again, because it will train your brain to look for those good moments.
Yeah, it's literally science. I mean, think of it like the positive feedback loop. Like every time you ring a bell and you give the dog food, eventually it's going to recognize that, oh, the bell goes with food. I mean, we're literally like animals, friends. So like you just have to like use these little tactics in ways that work best for you. And it might sound a little bit crazy at first where you're like, I'm going to talk to myself in the mirror and tell myself that like I'm good enough. Like that sounds stupid. I thought so too. But you know what? It fucking works. I prefer to write it out, but like if you're a writer, or if you're somebody who wants to say it out loud or say it to yourself in the mirror, you might have to go through steps. Like at first, you might not be able to say it to yourself in the mirror because it's going to be very challenging. But over time, I challenge you to, embrace the discomfort and do those things, because Sam is a testament to like how it actually works, because I've known Sam for a little over a year and I've seen you grow tremendously in the last year, not just with everything in your career with Hidden Summit, but also just as a person, and being more willing to like just be who you are instead of trying to be somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was a challenging year. But like you said, those challenging moments, like it shows you who you are, and the way you approach those challenging times, like, will determine who you are. And I
Mm-hmm.
think getting to be more authentic and who I am, because I had to go through these steps, and I had to realize, like, the way I talk to myself matters, so I'm going to talk to myself nicely. Like, those are going to be the best years of your life when you can just be the person that you want to be and know that you are doing the work to do the things that you want to do.
Yeah. And I think it all comes back to like, one thing for me is like this last year has been super challenging, but one thing that I'm constantly reminded of is life is really fucking short. And why
Yeah.
would I waste my time, my short time on this earth, trying to be somebody to please somebody else instead of just trying to please myself?
Yeah. Yeah. Nobody is thinking of you as much as you are thinking of you.
That's a fact. And that goes for everybody who's going to the gym this year in the new year. And you're like, I don't want people to
Yeah.
look at me. Nobody fucking cares about you. They're all looking at themselves in the mirror. I'm sorry to say. But like it's true. Like they're too focused on their reps to care about what you're doing. So just do what you're doing and don't worry about what anybody could potentially think. Because think about like a lot of people don't post things that they want to post on the internet, and they don't create things that they want to create because they're afraid of what somebody on the internet is going to say or think about it. Those people don't pay your bills. Those people don't see you at your worst moments. Like, who gives a shit what anybody else thinks, especially on the internet? Because usually if somebody's taking out stuff on you, that means that they got stuff that they need to work on, you
Right.
know? It's like when I had somebody slip into my DMs today, and this happens very consistently because I have quite a few imbalances. I have terrible scoliosis. I have my hips are misaligned. We're working on it, okay, for all the people. But you know, I still have some imbalances. So when I squat, my knees
Right.
cave a little bit more than I'd like them to. We're working on it. They've gotten way better. And somebody just slips into my DMs again and goes, hey, it looks like you have some imbalances. You should really get with somebody to work on that. And I'm like, cool, Karen. I appreciate, I don't say that. I say like, hey, yeah, I'm working on it. It's come tremendously far since then. But the point that I'm making is that the person, when I click on their profile, has zero fucking posts, has a anime character as their profile picture, is following like 5 people and has 0 followers. There are people on the internet who are just there to make you feel like shit, who don't do anything themselves, who are probably just sitting in a basement. So who
Yep.
cares?
Exactly. Yeah. It's the people with the least to say that are the loudest.
And that's a fact. And they're the people that matter the least in your life, too.
Yeah.
Look, the people who want you to get better, they're the people that you need to listen to, and they're going to be there to help support you. And they're going to tell you straight up what you need to do. And they're never
Yeah.
going to tear you down. So if someone starts tearing you down, that means you need to get a new friend.
Right. Right. There's a difference between get your shit together and you're a piece of
Yeah, and just like talking shit, right? Especially when
shit.
there's no
Right.
like solution, like it's not
Yeah.
constructive criticism or constructive feedback, just somebody just talking shit at you. There's a very big difference between that. There's a difference between, hey, I'm trying to help you become better, and I'm just talking hate on you, and it probably has something to do with something that's going on in my life.
Yeah.
So now moving into the new year, like I know you said that you wanted to start running a little bit more, but
Mhm.
you know, I wanted to finish it off with like asking you like what are your biggest things that you want to do in 2024 that might scare the shit out of you?
One of the big things, which sounds so small, but again, relative, it's relative,
Yeah.
um, was travel. For me last year was the first time in like 10 years that I did any kind of solo travel,
Yeah.
which was huge for me. When I was like between 16 and 18, I would travel at least once a month
Yeah.
between like Northern California and Southern California. I would go back and forth by myself at least once a month. And I loved it. It was, if you've never gone anywhere by yourself, it is so exciting.
Yeah.
And it's something that I missed so much. Not that I don't love to be home, like, and to be with my family, but being able to do that again was so exciting for me. And it's something that I want to do more of. But again, that means that I have to be away from my kids and like away from my home. And that's hard for me.
Yeah.
Um, but just being able to travel and obviously like things that I didn't talk about that I posted today with all of the other things was like I'm still taking care of myself. Like I'm still challenging myself in my workouts all of the time as you know.
It's hard to not when Eric's your coach. You're
Exactly.
challenging yourself doing something wrong. You're probably not doing the work. You're just skipping the point.
Yeah, right. Like you're just not following it at all at that point. If like
Mhm.
you're not dying a little bit.
Yeah.
But like I am still continuing to challenge myself in all of those ways. But as far as like doing scary things, it's like traveling more, and with that, I have to plan, which is always a very scary thing for me. Planning for the future, it's like I'm very much like always waiting for that shoe to drop.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people definitely are in that boat too, especially when somebody's like having, a good point in their life where like, oh, all these good things are happening. A lot of people have in the back of their head, because I used to be this person. Now I'm trying not to be, where it's like, okay, well, I'm waiting for it. When's like the fucking floor gonna fall through, you know?
Exactly. And that is still something that I am working through. So planning in general
Yeah.
is kind of a big leap for me. So like I don't have anything concrete because it's a scary thought.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that's a huge step for me personally as far as like making plans that I am sticking to travel, to like see different things, like looking at maybe looking at somewhere else to live because like
How's the weather over there?
it's there was sunshine today, which was awesome.
What's the
This has been
temperature
a very
around now?
my computer right now says 27, which is
That's
like
gross.
it's you know what? It's seasonably unseasonably warm. Like
That
this
that's
winter
even
has
worse.
been so mild. So mild.
Yeah.
Like I
It's
had a
30 degrees here. So like I'm in a weird part of Florida where it's not quite like Florida-esque. Like I'll go outside later and be able to see my breath, which when I moved to Florida, I didn't anticipate that bullshit. I thought I was that. Um, but I have a client who lives in Alaska, and she sent me a photo earlier today. She got a shipment of energy drinks from First Form, and she was like, I made the mistake of ordering energy drinks in the winter. I usually don't, but I completely forgot. And half of them were frozen, and like frozen solid, where she like had to get scissors to cut it open, and the other half were like shaken up, exploding.
yeah. No, like I got on my memories or like my stories memories this time last year it was -4
Oh God. Oh
at
no.
noon.
Oh my.
So this is a very mild winter.
Yeah. So where do you want to visit? Because I know that you put up a
Florida,
question box.
obviously.
I know you put up a question box on your story yesterday. You're like, I'm looking to travel, and I just go, my house.
Yes, yeah. Like obviously, we're gonna do a Hidden Summit girls trip to
Oh yeah.
Caitlin's house with
Yes.
Dara and Brooke, um, and do like would you say energy drinks and deadlifts,
Energy drinks, deadlifts, barking dogs,
dogs. Yep.
and energy drinks and
Yep.
steaks. All those good things. And then of course fireside chats, because that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
But I'm
Yeah.
excited
I
for
think
2024. I think it's going to be a great year for you for sure, and like just extreme growth, because you're a completely different person than you were last year.
yeah, which is it's a weird place to be. It's a good place, but it's a weird place to be.
Yeah, just lean into it though.
Yeah. We're
That's it.
trying.
Hell yeah. Well, keep telling yourself the right stuff. Keep living the example.
Yeah.
I'm really grateful for you as a friend, but also for you to reach out, and like that's a big thing too. You reached out to me and said, "Hey, I want to talk about this on your podcast," and I was like, "Oh, well, okay." Usually, people I reach out to them, but I guess Sam is cool, so we'll just go with it. No, I appreciate
Shit
you
show
for,
Sam.
yeah, I appreciate you for bringing this insight to people, because I think that a lot of people are going to learn a lot from it. And if you take action on this stuff, it can actually work for you, and make 2024 very different than what maybe all the other years where you said you were going to do it are going to be in the past. So, is there anything else that you want to say to the audience before you go?
No, I should have prepared this. Fuck.
Oh,
I don't know why I didn't think of that.
that's
Every
okay.
time. I came so prepared, like with the nugget of an idea.
She had a topic and everything. She just can't think of like the closing lines. That's okay. Because I think the biggest thing that we say leaving here is, start telling yourself the things that that you would tell the person that you want to be.
Yeah.
Like, don't talk shit to yourself, because you got to be kind to yourself, but you also got to take personal responsibility. Like, if you're not doing all that you can to get the life that you want, then that's on you. But you can change that right now. That's the beauty of
Right.
life. You can always change right now.
Yeah. I think there are plenty of like little nuggets in there
Yeah. I think this is a really
to
valuable
wrap it up.
episode. That's okay. Shit show, Sam. Well, guys, thank you for coming around. Thanks, Sam, again for showing us, sharing your knowledge with us and sharing your experience with us. And go out and do one thing that's going to take you one step closer to where you want to be.